The year was 2347, and humanity had finally achieved what it had dreamed of for thousands of years. They had made contact with intelligent life from another world. But the Valderan Collective did not come in peace. Commander Nathan Cole stood on the bridge of the starship, Endurance, and watched the holographic display in front of him. His hands were steady, but his heart was pounding in his chest. 3,000 alien vessels had just appeared from fold space above Earth. They hung in the darkness like a swarm of metal insects. Blocking out the stars, the Valderan had sent their message before firing a single shot. The words were cold and simple. Surrender unconditionally, or face complete extinction. They gave humanity 12 hours to decide. Nathan turned to his communications officer, a young woman named Amy Turner. Her face was pale, and her fingers trembled over her console. "Get me Admiral Holloway," Nathan said quietly. Now, in Geneva, the leaders of Earth gathered in an underground bunker that had not been used in over a century. Admiral Grace Holloway sat at the head of the long table. She was 73 years old, with silver hair and sharp eyes that had seen much in her long life. But she had never seen combat. None of them had. Humanity had been at peace for over 100 years. Dr. Kevin Park, the chief expert on alien languages, stood before them with a tablet in his hands. He had spent the last 4 hours translating the Valderan's message. His voice was tired and grim as he spoke. "They have done this to 47 other species across the galaxy," he said. "Every single one of them surrendered. The Valderan absorb conquered species into their collective. They use them as slave labor, as soldiers, as resources. Those who resist." He paused and took a breath. "There are no records of anyone who resisted. The Valderan simply destroy them completely. They erase every trace that the species ever existed." The room fell silent. The weight of those words pressed down on everyone. General Marcus Webb, a large man with a scarred face, leaned forward. "What kind of weapons are we talking about? What can they do?" Dr. Park shook his head slowly. "Their smallest ships carry weapons that could level a city in seconds. Their largest vessels could crack the planet itself. And they have 3,000 of them sitting above our heads right now. And our fleet?" asked President Maria Santos. She was a small woman with dark hair and calm eyes. She had led Earth for 6 years, through times of peace and growth. Now she faced the greatest crisis in human history. Admiral Holloway answered. "We have 287 combat-ready vessels. Most of them are patrol ships designed for peacekeeping. We have never built a true warship. We never thought we would need to." The silence returned, heavier than before. It was President Santos who spoke first. Her voice was quiet but firm. "Then we will be the first." Every head in the room turned to look at her. "The first to what, Madam President?" asked General Webb. "The first to resist," she said. "The first to fight back. The first to show these creatures that not every species will kneel." Admiral Holloway studied the president's face for a long moment. Then slowly she nodded. "If we do this, many will die. Billions, perhaps. There is a real chance we will lose everything." President Santos stood up from her chair. "If we surrender, we lose everything anyway. Our freedom, our future, our very identity as a species. The Valderan will turn our children into slaves and our world into a resource mine. I would rather die on my feet than live on my knees." The words hung in the air like fire. On the Endurance, Nathan Cole received word of the president's decision. He closed his eyes for a moment and thought of his sister, Samantha, working in a research facility somewhere beneath the Rocky Mountains. He thought of his parents, long dead now, who had raised him to believe that some things were worth fighting for. He opened his eyes and looked at his crew. They were young, most of them. They had joined the fleet expecting to explore the stars, not to die defending their home. "You heard the message," he said. "You know what we are facing. I will not lie to you. Our chances are not good. The enemy is stronger, faster, and more experienced than we are. They have conquered dozens of worlds, and they have never lost." He paused and looked at each of them in turn. "But they have never faced humanity. They do not know what we are capable of. They do not know that we spent 10,000 years fighting each other, surviving ice ages, plagues, and wars that nearly destroyed us. They do not know that we crawled out of the mud and reached for the stars. Through sheer stubborn will." Amy Turner wiped her eyes and sat up, straighter at her console. "They think we are just another weak species to be conquered," Nathan continued. "They are wrong, and we are going to show them exactly how wrong they are." The bridge crew began to move with new purpose. Fear was still there, but something else had joined it now. Something harder. Something that had slept in humanity's heart for a very long time. Above Earth, the Valderan Supreme Commander Thexanar watched the blue planet below with cold, patient eyes. He had done this many times before. The fear, the panic, the desperate attempts at negotiation, he had seen it all. Every species reacted the same way in the end. They begged. They pleaded. And then they surrendered. His communications officer approached with a message from the planet's surface. "They have responded, Supreme Commander." Thexanar made a gesture of mild interest. "Read it." The officer's voice wavered slightly as he spoke. "You have made an error. Leave now, and we will consider this a misunderstanding. Stay, and you will learn why humanity has spent its entire existence fighting." There was a long pause on the Valderan bridge. Then Thexanar laughed. It was a cold, clicking sound that echoed off the metal walls. "They threaten us? These primitive creatures with their tiny fleet? This is amusing." He turned back to the viewport and watched Earth spinning slowly in the darkness. "Let them have their 12 hours, he said. "Let them pretend to be brave. When the time comes, they will break like all the others." But deep inside, in a place he did not recognize, something whispered that perhaps this time would be different. He ignored it. That was his first mistake. The clock was ticking. 11 hours remained before the Valderan deadline, and across the planet, humanity was preparing for war. Admiral Grace Holloway had not slept in 36 hours. She stood in the command center beneath Geneva, watching dozens of screens that showed troop movements, fleet positions, and civilian evacuations. Her body was tired, but her mind was sharp and clear. "Admiral," said a young officer named Peter Walsh, "we have a problem. The people are panicking. There are riots in several major cities. They are demanding that we surrender." Holloway nodded slowly. She had expected this. Fear was a powerful force, and the Valderan had used it as a weapon against every species they had conquered. "Tell the local authorities to maintain order as best they can," she said. "But do not use force against our own people. They are scared. They have every right to be scared. Our job is to give them something better than fear." "What would that be, Admiral?" She turned to look at him with eyes that had seen too much in the past day. "Hope." In a bunker deep beneath the Rocky Mountains, Dr. Samantha Cole worked frantically at her computer terminal. She was 32 years old, with dark hair tied back in a messy ponytail and circles under her eyes from lack of sleep. Around her, dozens of other scientists and engineers rushed back and forth, shouting to each other across the massive underground facility. This was Project Prometheus, the most secret program in human history. It had been created 200 years ago, during a dark period when humanity had nearly destroyed itself with nuclear weapons. The project's purpose was simple and terrible: to build weapons capable of ending civilizations. The weapons had never been used. After the Great Peace began, most people forgot they existed. But they had never been dismantled. They had simply waited, sleeping in the darkness, ready to wake when humanity needed them most. Lieutenant Daniel Hayes approached Samantha's workstation. He was 26 years old, with a round face and nervous eyes. He had been an engineer for only 3 years. He had never expected to be part of something like this. "Dr. Cole," he said quietly, "the Prometheus array is almost ready. But I need to ask you something." Samantha did not look up from her screen. "Ask. These weapons, they were designed to destroy ourselves, to crack planets and poison stars. Are we really going to use them?" This time, she did look up. Her eyes were tired but steady. "Daniel, let me tell you something about humanity. We have spent our entire existence on the edge of extinction. Ice ages, plagues, wars, disasters, we have survived them all. And do you know how we survived?" He shook his head. "By being willing to do whatever was necessary. By refusing to give up, even when everything seemed hopeless. The creatures up there in their ships think they know what war is. They have conquered dozens of worlds, and they think that makes them powerful." She leaned closer. "But they have never fought a species that was willing to burn down the entire galaxy just to take them with us." Daniel swallowed hard. "That sounds terrifying." Samantha smiled grimly. "It should, because that is exactly what we are. We are the species that invented nuclear weapons and then somehow managed not to destroy ourselves with them. We are the species that looked at the universe and decided that we belonged among the stars, no matter what stood in our way. The Valdaran have no idea what they have awakened." She turned back to her screen. "Now help me finish these calculations. We have work to do." On the Valdaran flagship, Dexinar was growing impatient. 8 hours remained, and the humans had not sent any further communications. No pleas for mercy, no offers of negotiation, no desperate attempts to buy more time. It was unusual. "What are they doing down there?" he asked his intelligence officer. The officer studied his displays with confusion. "They appear to be evacuating their cities, moving their population underground. And there is significant activity at several hidden facilities across the planet." "Hidden facilities?" "Yes, Supreme Commander. We did not detect them initially. They are buried very deep, shielded from our sensors. We cannot determine their purpose." Dexinar made a gesture of dismissal. "It does not matter. Whatever they are planning, it will not save them. No species has ever successfully resisted the collective. Their weapons are primitive, their ships are weak, and their numbers are small." But even as he spoke, a small doubt crept into his mind. Why were they not begging? Why were they not offering to negotiate? Every other species had spent their final hours trying desperately to avoid the inevitable. But the humans seemed to be preparing for what? He pushed the thought aside. It did not matter. In 8 hours, his fleet would begin the bombardment. The human cities would burn, their fleet would be destroyed, and the survivors would submit. It was the way things always happened. In orbit around Earth, Nathan Cole was gathering his fleet. 287 ships, most of them small and lightly armed, faced 3,000 Valdaran warships. The numbers were impossible. The outcome seemed certain, but Nathan had a plan. "Listen carefully," he said over the fleet communication channel. "We cannot win this battle through strength. They are too powerful. But we do not need to win. We only need to buy time." "Time for what, Commander?" asked Captain Lisa Monroe. She commanded the destroyer Defiant, one of the few true warships in the human fleet. She was 40 years old, with short gray hair and a face that showed no fear. "Time for the ground teams to complete their work," Nathan replied. "There are weapons being prepared on Earth that can change the course of this fight. But they need time to be activated. Our job is to give them that time, no matter the cost." There was a long pause over the channel. Every captain, every crew member understood what he was asking. He was asking them to die. It was Lisa Monroe who spoke first. Then we will give them time. Every minute we can buy. Every second. One by one, the other captains voiced their agreement. They were afraid only fools would not be afraid, but they were also determined. They had chosen to fight, and they would see it through to the end. Nathan closed his eyes for a moment and thought of all the people counting on them. The billions on Earth, hiding in bunkers and shelters, hoping that somehow humanity would survive this day. All ships, he said quietly, prepare for battle. The hours ticked by. The Valderan fleet waited in cold silence. The human fleet held its position, small and fragile against the darkness. And deep beneath the mountains, Samantha Cole and her team worked desperately to wake the sleeping weapons that might be humanity's only hope. The clock reached 0. The Valderan began to move, and the sky began to burn. The first Valderan shots struck the lunar colonies without warning. One moment, 17,000 people were living their lives in the domed cities on the moon's surface. The next moment, they were gone, vaporized in a flash of terrible light that could be seen from Earth with the naked eye. Nathan Cole watched the moon burn and felt something inside him grow cold and hard. He had known people on those colonies, friends, colleagues. Now they were nothing but ash and memory. All ships, he said, his voice steady despite the horror he felt, engage the enemy. Buy the ground teams as much time as possible. The human fleet surged forward into the impossible darkness. The battle that followed would later be called the most one-sided engagement in military history. Human ships, small and fragile, threw themselves at Valderan warships that outgunned them in every way. Lasers and missiles filled the space between the fleets, and human vessels began to die. The destroyer Courage was the first to fall. Her captain, a young man named Stephen Grant, managed to ram his burning ship into the side of a Valderan cruiser before the reactor exploded. Both ships vanished in a ball of fire. "Courage is gone," reported Amy Turner, her voice breaking. Nathan nodded grimly. "They took one with them. Honor their sacrifice. Keep fighting." All across the battle, similar scenes played out. Human ships that should have retreated instead pushed forward. Crews that could have surrendered instead chose to make their deaths count. It was madness, the Valderan observers thought. Pure, senseless madness. On the Valderan flagship, Vexenar watched with growing confusion. He had conquered 47 worlds, and he had never seen anything like this. Other species fought when cornered, yes, but they also surrendered when the situation became hopeless. They valued their lives. They wanted to survive. These humans did not seem to care about survival. They seemed to care only about causing as much damage as possible before they died. Why did they not flee? He asked his tactical officer. Why do they not surrender? They must know they cannot win. The officer had no answer. None of them did. Captain Lisa Monroe commanded the Defiant from her position at the front of the human formation. Her ship had already taken heavy damage. Half her crew was dead. Fires burned in 3 sections. But she was still fighting. "Engineering," she called over the intercom. "How long until the reactor overloads?" 4 minutes, Captain. Maybe 5. Lisa nodded. Through her viewport, she could see a massive Valderan battleship directly ahead. It was the largest vessel in the enemy fleet, bristling with weapons that had destroyed dozens of human ships in the past hour. "Helm," she said calmly. "Set course for that battleship. Maximum speed." Her helmsman, a young man named Chris Palmer, looked at her with understanding in his eyes. He was 24 years old. He had wanted to be an explorer, not a soldier. But he did not hesitate. "Course set, Captain." Lisa opened a channel to the rest of the fleet. "This is Captain Monroe of the Defiant. We are going in. It has been an honor serving with all of you. She closed the channel and turned to her remaining crew. They were battered, burned, and exhausted. But not one of them asked to leave. Not one of them begged for mercy. "Tell them we didn't kneel," she said softly. The Defiant accelerated toward the battleship. Valderan weapons tore into her hull, ripping away armor and deck after deck. But she kept coming, closer and closer, until the Valderan crew could see her burning bridge through their viewports. Then the reactor exploded. The blast tore through both ships, creating a new sun in the darkness of space. The Valderan battleship, the pride of their fleet, vanished in an instant. Lisa Monroe and her crew went with it, their names forever burned into the memory of humanity. Nathan Cole watched the explosion through tear-filled eyes. He had known Lisa for 15 years. She had been one of his closest friends. "Commander," Amy Turner said quietly, "the ground teams are reporting progress. Dr. Cole says the Prometheus array is almost ready." Nathan wiped his eyes and steadied his voice. "Then we keep fighting. Every second counts." Deep beneath the Rocky Mountains, Samantha Cole worked with desperate speed. Around her, alarms blared and screens flashed with warnings. The Valderan had begun bombarding the planet's surface, and even the deep bunkers were shaking from the impacts. "We are out of time," Daniel Hayes said frantically. "The array is only at 92%. If we activate it now, if we do not activate it now, there will be nothing left to save," Samantha interrupted. She looked at the young engineer with fierce determination. "This is our only chance, Daniel. Everything depends on what we do in the next 60 seconds. She turned to her console and began entering the final commands. Her fingers flew across the keyboard, inputting codes that had been waiting 200 years to be used. "Prometheus array charging," the computer announced. "Activation in 30 seconds. Above them, the battle was reaching its end. Only 50 human ships remained, fighting desperately against overwhelming numbers. Nathan Cole's Endurance was among them, battered and broken but still firing. 20 seconds, Samantha whispered. Watching the countdown, the Valderan fleet pressed their advantage, sensing victory. Their weapons poured fire into the remaining human ships, destroying them one by one. 10 seconds. Nathan Cole braced himself as another impact shook the Endurance. His ship was dying. He could feel it in the groaning of the hull, the failing of the systems, the smoke that filled the bridge. 5 seconds. Samantha Cole pressed the final button. Prometheus array activated. For a moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then, across the solar system, hidden satellites that had orbited silently for 200 years suddenly came alive. They were not weapons in the normal sense. They did not fire missiles or lasers or bombs. They did something far worse. They generated fields that reached into fold space, the dimension that the Valderan used for faster-than-light travel. And they collapsed it, completely, permanently on the Valderan flagship. Dexanar watched in horror as every navigation system on his ship went dark at once. What is happening? He demanded. What have they done? His science officer's voice was trembling. Supreme Commander, they have collapsed the fold space corridors. All of them. We cannot retreat. We cannot call for reinforcements. We cannot escape. For the first time in 1,000 years, a Valderan fleet was completely alone, and somewhere in the wreckage of his dying ship. Nathan Cole began to smile. Ground team reports success, Amy Turner said weakly. The Valderan are trapped. Nathan leaned back in his chair and laughed. It was a tired, painful laugh, but it was real. Then we have won the first battle, he said. Now let us show them what happens when you trap a human with nothing left to lose. The war was just beginning. Dexanar stood on the bridge of his flagship and tried to understand what had just happened. For 1,000 years, the Valderan Collective had been the most feared force in the galaxy. They had conquered world after world, species after species. No one had ever stopped them. No one had ever even come close. And now they were trapped, surrounded by enemies in a hostile star system with no way to escape. "How is this possible?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "How could these primitives have such technology?" His science officer shook his head helplessly. "We do not know, Supreme Commander. The satellites that generated the field were hidden throughout the solar system. Some of them appear to be over 200 years old. They have been waiting all this time. Waiting for what? For us, apparently." Daxonar turned to look at the viewport. Earth hung below them, scarred and burning from the bombardment, but still intact, still defiant. The remaining human ships, fewer than 50 now, had pulled back to regroup. They were damaged and weak, but they were not running. They were waiting. "Supreme Commander," his communications officer reported, "we are receiving a transmission from the planet's surface." "Put it through." Admiral Grace Holloway's face appeared on the screen. She looked tired, old, and beaten, but her eyes were hard as steel. "To the Valderan fleet," she said. "You came to our world and demanded our surrender. You destroyed our cities and murdered our people. You thought we would break like all the others. You were wrong." She leaned closer to the camera. "Now you will learn why humanity has never been conquered. Not by nature, not by disease, not by each other, and certainly not by you. You wanted a war? You have one, and you will not survive it." The transmission ended. For a long moment, no one on the Valderan bridge spoke. Then Daxonar straightened his posture and forced confidence into his voice. "They are bluffing. They have trapped us, yes, but they cannot defeat us. We still have 3,000 ships. They have fewer than 50. We will destroy them, and then we will destroy their planet. Without fold space travel, it will take us longer to return home, but we will return. And we will bring news of this species' destruction." His officers nodded, but there was doubt in their eyes. Something had changed. The humans had done something no other species had ever done. They had surprised the Valderan. What else could they do? The answer came 3 days later. From hidden bases on Mars, Europa, and Titan, ships began to launch. They were not military vessels. They were mining ships, cargo haulers, industrial transports. Ugly, battered vessels that had spent decades hauling rocks and ore through the solar system, but they had been changed. Over the past century, quietly and secretly, they had been fitted with weapons. Experimental weapons developed in hidden laboratories. Weapons that the peaceful human government had officially banned but had never actually destroyed. There were hundreds of them. And they were coming. Nathan Cole had survived the first battle, though his ship had not. He now commanded from a temporary flagship, a converted cargo vessel named the Rising Star. It was slow and clumsy compared to the Endurance, but it carried weapons that could punch through Valderan armor. "All ships," he broadcast across the fleet's new encrypted channel. "This is Commander Cole. The hunting begins now. Our orders are simple: destroy every Valderan vessel in the system. No mercy, no surrender, no survivors." Captain Amy Turner, promoted after the first battle, commanded one of the new armed transports. Her ship, the Iron Hammer, had once carried supplies to the outer colonies. Now it carried death. "Commander," she said, "the Valderan are forming a defensive formation around their flagship. They seem uncertain. I do not think they have ever been hunted before." Nathan smiled grimly. "Then let us teach them what it feels like." The second phase of the battle was nothing like the first. This time, the humans did not charge directly at the enemy. They used their knowledge of the solar system to their advantage. They hid behind asteroids and moons. They attacked from unexpected angles. They struck quickly and then vanished into the darkness. The Valderan, trained to fight in open space against enemies who submitted or died quickly, did not know how to respond. Their formation began to break apart as ships were picked off one by one. On the fourth day, a group of human Marines boarded a damaged Valderan cruiser. They were led by Sergeant Rachel Long, a woman who had been a police officer before the invasion. She had never expected to fight aliens in the corridors of an enemy spaceship. The Valderan were physically powerful, standing nearly 8 feet tall with armored skin and multiple limbs. But they had never faced close combat against humans. They did not understand the savagery that humans were capable of when fighting for survival. The battle inside the cruiser lasted 6 hours. When it was over, Rachel Long and her surviving Marines controlled the ship. They had lost half their team, but they had won. "This is Sergeant Long," she reported to command. "The enemy vessel is ours. They fought hard, but they were not ready for us. I do not think they have ever fought like this before. Hand to hand, room by room. They did not know what to do." Similar scenes played out across the system. Human boarding parties attacked damaged Valderan ships, capturing some and destroying others. The Valderan, who had always fought from the safety of their powerful vessels, found themselves facing an enemy that was willing to look them in the eye and kill them up. Close, Daxonar watched his fleet die around him and felt something he had not experienced in centuries. Fear. "How many ships have we lost?" he asked. 417, Supreme Commander. "And we have failed to destroy a single human vessel in the past 2 days. They refuse to engage us directly. They strike from the shadows and then disappear. 400 ships, gone, against an enemy that should have been destroyed in hours. What are they?" Daxonar whispered. "What kind of species fights like this?" His tactical officer had no answer. None of them did. On the Rising Star, Nathan Cole received a message from his sister. Samantha's face was tired but proud as she appeared on his screen. "Nathan, the second wave of Prometheus weapons is ready. We can begin destroying their larger ships directly now." Nathan nodded. "Good. How are things down there?" Samantha looked away for a moment. "The planet is damaged. Badly. The bombardment killed many people before we stopped it. But we are still here. We are still fighting. That is all that matters," Nathan said. "Stay alive, Sam. We will finish this. And then we will rebuild." He closed the channel and turned to his crew. They were exhausted, battered, and grieving. But they were also victorious. For the first time in this terrible war, they were winning. "All ships," he said, "prepare for the final push. It is time to end this." Outside, in the cold darkness of space, the remains of the Valderan fleet waited for the death that was coming for them. They had come to Earth expecting easy conquest. They had found something else entirely. They had found humanity. The final battle lasted 3 weeks, day by day. Hour by hour, the human fleet hunted down the remaining Valderan ships. There was no mercy given. None was asked for. The Valderan had come to Earth demanding surrender or extinction, and humanity had chosen to give them a taste of their own medicine. Daxonar's flagship was the last to fall. The Supreme Commander stood on his burning bridge as human boarding parties fought their way through the corridors of his dying ship. He could hear the sounds of combat getting closer, the screams of his soldiers, the harsh shouts of the human invaders. Nathan Cole led the assault personally. He had lost too many friends, too many comrades, to let someone else finish this fight. His armor was scarred and blackened from weeks of combat, and his body ached with exhaustion. But his eyes were clear and cold as he pushed deeper into the alien vessel. They found Daxonar in the command center, standing alone among the bodies of his fallen officers. The Supreme Commander was wounded, purple blood dripping from a gash in his side, but he still stood tall. "So," Daxonar said, his voice tired and bitter, You have won. I did not think it was possible. In 1,000 years, no species has ever defeated the Valdaran in battle. Nathan lowered his weapon slightly. There is always a first time. You do not understand what you have done, the alien continued. The collective will send more ships, tens of thousands of them. They will burn your world to ash and scatter your species across the galaxy as slaves. Nathan shook his head slowly. No, they will not. You cannot stop them. You are one small species on one small world. The collective spans 100 star systems. Their resources are limitless. Maybe, Nathan said. But now they know something they did not know before. They know that we can be beaten, that there is a species out there willing to fight back. And more importantly, he stepped closer to the wounded alien. They know that the cost of fighting us is too high. The Exenar stared at him for a long moment. You are insane. All of you. Perhaps. But we are alive. And you are not. He raised his weapon. The supreme commander of the Valdaran collective died on his feet, still refusing to kneel. In that moment, Nathan felt something unexpected, a small flicker of respect for his enemy. The Exenar had been cruel and arrogant, but he had not begged for mercy at the end. It was more than Nathan would have given the Valdaran credit for. When the battle was over, not a single Valdaran ship remained. The debris of 3,000 vessels floated through the solar system, a graveyard in the stars. Humanity had paid a terrible price. 2 billion dead. The moon shattered. Half the planet's surface scarred by the bombardment. But they had won. Admiral Grace Holloway stood before the United Earth Assembly in a temporary chamber built in the ruins of Geneva. The old building had been destroyed in the initial attack, but humanity had already begun to rebuild. It was what they did. It was what they had always done. We have captured the Valdaran's communication equipment, she announced. We can send a message to the rest of their collective. To the entire galaxy, in fact. Every species that has ever been conquered by the Valdaran. Every world that has ever submitted in fear. President Maria Santos nodded. She had aged years in the past month, her hair now streaked with gray, her face lined with grief and exhaustion. But she was still standing, still leading. Then let us make it count, she said. Let the galaxy know what happened here. They chose Nathan Cole to deliver the message. He stood on the bridge of a salvaged ship, with the burning wreckage of the Valdaran fleet visible through the viewport behind him. His uniform was torn and stained, and there were bandages on his hands and face. He looked like what he was, a soldier who had survived a war. The recording began. To the Valdaran collective, he said, his voice clear and steady, and to any species who would threaten Earth. You came to our world expecting us to surrender. You believed that your numbers and your technology made you invincible. You thought that because you had conquered 47 other worlds, you could conquer us. He paused and let the words hang in the air. You were wrong. His voice grew harder. We are humanity. We have spent our entire existence fighting. Fighting our world. Fighting each other. Fighting extinction itself. We survived ice ages that covered our planet in frozen death. We survived plagues that killed half our species. We survived wars that nearly ended us forever. We did not crawl out of the mud and reach for the stars just to kneel before you. He stepped closer to the camera. Your fleet is gone. Every ship, every soldier, every commander who thought we would be easy prey. 3,000 of your best vessels came to Earth, and not one of them will ever return. We sent them into the dark, and we will do the same to any who follow. The viewport behind him showed the debris field, a silent testament to his words. This is Earth's last message to the galaxy. You just signed your annihilation. Come and see. Come with your fleets and your armies and your weapons. Come with everything you have. It will not be enough. He smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "We are not afraid of you. We have never been afraid. And now the galaxy knows it. Every species you have conquered, every world you have enslaved, they are watching this message right now. They are learning something new. They are learning that the Valderan can be beaten." His voice dropped to something almost gentle. "You wanted to know what humanity is? This is what we are. We are the species that refuses to die. We are the species that looks at impossible odds and decides to fight anyway. We are the species that will burn down the stars themselves before we submit." He straightened his posture. "So come. If you dare, we will be waiting." The transmission ended. Across the galaxy, beings of 100 different species watched the message in stunned silence. For 1,000 years, they had lived under the shadow of the Valderan Collective. They had been told that resistance was impossible, that submission was the only option. Now they knew the truth. On a dozen conquered worlds, rebellions began to stir. Species that had given up hope suddenly found it again. They whispered a name to each other in the darkness, a name that had become a symbol of defiance. Humanity. On Earth, the survivors began to rebuild. The scars of the war would take generations to heal. Entire cities lay in ruins. Millions mourned family members lost to the bombardment. The night sky was changed forever, the shattered moon a constant reminder of what they had endured. But they were alive. They were free, and they were ready. Nathan Cole stood on a hillside overlooking what had once been San Francisco, watching the sun set over the damaged landscape. His sister Samantha stood beside him, her hand in his. "Do you think they will come?" she asked quietly. "The rest of the Valderan?" Nathan considered the question. "Maybe, probably, but not soon. They need time to understand what happened here. And when they do come," he squeezed her hand, "we will be ready." Samantha looked up at the sky, where the first stars were beginning to appear. Somewhere out there, the message was still traveling, spreading across the galaxy at the speed of light. "You think it was the right thing? Warning them like that?" Nathan nodded slowly. "We could have hidden, rebuilt quietly, hoped they would forget about us. But that is not who we are. We have always faced our enemies head on. And now the whole galaxy knows it." They stood together in silence, watching the stars appear one by one. The universe was vast and dark and full of dangers. But humanity had proven something today. They had proven that they belonged among those stars. That they would not be conquered. That they would not kneel. And that if the galaxy wanted to fight, humanity would give them one they would never forget. The war was over. The future was just beginning.